at 5 from UT San Antonio. National writer for ESPN, Adam Rittenberg, joins us on Sikkim 365 Radio, 365 Sports. Adam, what did you get out of the alliance? What meat and potatoes actually, if anything, came out?
Yeah, there's not a lot of that. And in some ways, it's not a surprise, I think, based on the timing of the announcement. And I think George Kliavkoff, the Pac-12 commissioner, who kind of referred to this, maybe not on the big Zoom call, but in some of the interviews after, where he said, we could have waited and provided more concrete information, but we felt there was a need to come out and say this is happening. Obviously, it had been reported, but come out and say this is a thing that we're doing, and obviously there's going to be more down the line. But they felt that the environment in college athletics is too unstable, and they really described college athletics being largely under siege, and so they felt they needed to come out and show this public unified front. And I do think a lot of it, guys, is in opposition to the SEC and the move that they made, adding Texas and Oklahoma, to say it's not going to be just the SEC dictating everything in the sport. There's other leagues, there's other big brands that are going to try to have a say, and rather than tearing each other apart with expansion, which could still happen, but at least right now the play is to not do that and to try to work together on some of these big topics.
So when he brings up expansion in the Pac-12, Kliavkoff, what do you really expect that to be on Friday? Do you expect that to be anything, or is that, well, we've made the alliance, expansion not now?
It's hard to predict with George Kliavkoff. I felt he's been the wild card in terms of the key figures all along, just because of his background and the very clear objective he had in getting the job, which was to improve football and to raise revenues in the conference. And so I think it's probably naive to write off expansion, even though that certainly seemed to kind of go against the spirit of what the alliance was trying to project yesterday. So it certainly would be odd to hear some of the comments from the other commissioners about the Big 12 and wanting the Big 12 to thrive and remain alive as a power conference, and then the Pac-12 to say, hey, they're looking at expansion, and then go pillage what's left of the Big 12. But it's college athletics, guys, and as much as they want to say that they're united, and I do believe that that's true to a degree, you have to look out for your own conference or your own schools. And if the Pac-12 determines that it's in their best interest to expand and that they could really enhance their value that way, which I don't know if they can, but they may believe they can, I don't think it's going to stop them from going forward.
So if they do not add Big 12 schools, what do you think those comments meant in regards to the Big 12?
Well, I think there is a genuine desire. I mean, they don't do this if they're all gung-ho on expansion. They would just be expanded.
Right.
And I think that they see that there's value in not ruining the Big 12 and not consolidating more power in the SEC or in only two conferences. I think ideally, those commissioners would like to see, five real power conferences and things kind of remain on track. Now, it's going to be hard to envision that because of what the SEC did and the increased power that they have. But I get the sense listening to those guys that they would very much like to have as many healthy power conferences as possible instead of one conference with all the power and influence.
Yeah, I would think so. In the end, Adam, what do you think is your gut feeling? And I know that whatever you say, Lord knows if it's going to be close, but and not because of you, but because of what we've seen the last month. What do you think happens to the Big 12? What do you think with the 8 remaining teams? Do they expand, or are they just going to fall apart and go different places?
Well, I think they have to assess the value of expansion, right? Because we all know that their revenues are going to go down, and they're going to go down significantly without Texas and Oklahoma. So as they assess the landscape, they certainly can expand. Most of those, really all of those American conference schools, if they had the opportunity to join a league that still has the automatic on the front of it or the autonomous conference on the front of it, they're going to jump at that opportunity. But the Big 12 has to assess by adding, will this offset the revenue loss that they're going to have losing Texas and Oklahoma, or is this just going to be another mouth to feed? And that's the tricky part. That's where the real analysis has to take place. We all know that they had these options on their plate back in 2016, many of the same options, and they chose not to expand. Now the situation has obviously changed, and maybe they feel it's in their best interest to do that. I think there could be an opportunity there, but I also wouldn't be surprised if the Big 12 says, you know what, we're good at 8. We're going to hang on to this autonomous automatic qualifying status, or whatever they're going to call it, power status, as long as they can. It certainly seems tough to do that when you're at 8, though, and those other conferences are at least at 12, if not larger.
Yeah, Adam, what did you make of the information, though, on that 4 or 5 years ago when they entertained this, that it was Texas and Oklahoma that kept them from doing it, and now they're doubly screwed in that they didn't expand and Texas and Oklahoma still left? Right.
Well, I mean, again, the problem with the Big 12 was that you had so much power in the hands of 2, and of those 2, you had one that, I think was always unreliable in Texas in terms of its interests, and was always looking out for Texas maybe more so than the conference. And I do think the Big 12 made a mistake by not expanding. I don't know if it would have prevented this outcome. It likely wouldn't have. But I think we're talking about a different situation if the Big 12 had gotten a little bit bigger back in 2016. And so, there's a lot of, Monday morning quarterback we can do on the Big 12 and what they could have done and the leadership and all of that. But I do think in hindsight, it would have been wise for them to kind of listen to what they've been told and seeing the value of adding some members.
So I want to ask you this, and this is not about expansion and realignment, and sometimes, thank God, it's not. How much did you get as far as feedback and with the story about Paul Wolf, the Washington State coach and his wife? And I read the entire thing. I could not stop reading it at first, Adam, and I know that there was another writer involved. I didn't quite know where it was going, and then, my goodness, I found myself minutes and minutes and minutes later still wanting to read to the very end. Is that one of the most powerful pieces you've ever done?
Oh, I appreciate that. Definitely, one of those stories that you'll remember for the rest of your career, and we're hoping to kind of do more with that project, because there was a lot that we couldn't include, and we obviously focused so heavily on Paul, but there's so many interesting parts of that story, and just obviously incredible what happened. And there was so much that happened after his mother disappeared in those years with her family and his father, and then never getting a conviction, and then thinking this thing was over, and then surprise, they're able to identify her remains last year, and then have this incredibly moving funeral and celebration of life that I attended back in July in California. And so Paul's just a great guy. He's got a great family. They're very fun and entertaining people, and we're just really honored to be able to share that story. And I appreciate what you said, and obviously got a huge response. And again, Kyle Bonaguro, my great colleague, and I are hopefully going to see where this thing can go beyond just that one story.
Did you guys have a chance? I'm not saying you did.
I read it. It was fascinating.
It's incredible. Yeah. It's an incredible story, and it's just twists and turns, and to have some clarity, even though it still has to be horrible, to have some clarity about his mother had to be a big deal. We're talking to Adam Rittenberg of ESPN.com.
Yeah, Adam, going back to expansion, the AAC is locked in with ESPN. They seem to have a pretty good deal there, and obviously there was all that talk during the Texas-Oklahoma departure about, what was going on with the AAC. So autonomy is the only reason why, Houston and UCF or Tulsa or whoever would still want to jump to the Big 12, right? And how long, for those that don't know, and I'm not even entirely sure on it, I mean, autonomy status, is that just a forever thing? Because that's the only pull I see for those schools to jump to the Big 12, or am I missing something?
No, and that's a really good question. I mean, how long does that last? What qualifies? Who makes that decision? And I think that's why the playoff situation is so interesting, because the Big 12 obviously has that status right now and could have that status in an expanded playoff. But after what happened, is that status being reevaluated? And that's certainly something that those schools have to look at and say, you're always looking ahead, right? You're looking to your future. And is this stable? Am I more stable going to the Big 12, or am I more stable staying in the AAC? I still think that the prospect of having that access and certainly increased revenue, even though it's going to be decreased from what the current Big 12 schools are getting, would be really attractive for the current members of the AAC, which, again, strong conference. Mike Oresco's done a really good job as the commissioner, and maybe there's a merger. I mean, there's all sorts of things that might happen. But I think again, the urgency. We just talked about the alliance and how there wasn't a whole lot of information and maybe not a ton of urgency. There's a lot more urgency right now with the Big 12 and the AAC. I think those are the leagues to watch, along with the Pac-12, as to what's going to happen next.
Adam, thank you very much. Appreciate your time. Always great to have you on the show. Adam Rittenberg, ESPN.com, national college football writer, with us on Sikkim 365 Radio.